Hi, this is Esther Lin, photographer for MMAfighting.com, and I'd like to share some of my favorite images from UFC 196. In January, when they announced Rafael dos Anjos vs. Conor McGregor for the lightweight title, there was a giddiness for the change in UFC's usual operation. Remarkably, McGregor was being given the chance to hold two belts. Without hesitation, we were off to Vegas for a press conference. Seeing Holly Holm and Miesha Tate facing off, McGregor already taunting Dos Anjos, dressed as the drug kingpin El Chapo. But as fate would have it, Dos Anjos broke his foot weeks later, and suddenly, this request from a few months back before with Nate Diaz in Orlando, came to pass. So driving to Vegas for Fight Week, there was a new buzz and thrill, because this last-second replacement was just so fun. No belts, no bullshit, just a fight that captures the theater and melodrama of prize fighting. The open workouts were a frenzy. The theater was too small for the fervor that accompanied the card. Warring chants between Diaz and McGregor fans set the tone for the day. Champ Holly Holm was in high spirits, bringing up her usual volunteer, but this time going for a dance lesson and teaching the young fan the sprinkler and the Q-tip. Miesha Tate then took the stage, showing off striking and some prescient grappling. The challenger finished with a flex for the crowd. While the main event seemed like this crazy amorphous thing, I knew Holm vs. Tate was going to be a scrappy, arduous affair. When McGregor finally showed up, the anticipation had come to a boil. Conor showed off with his customary flash, dazzling the fans with spins and such, even turning to mock Nate Diaz's striking style, before settling into his own unorthodox movement training. The media scrum around him seemed to multiply, and I found myself squinting to see the Irishman. After what always seems like endless questions, McGregor stayed to sign autographs and meet the fans who had been waiting all day for the bombastic brawler. The next day was media day, and our own Mark Raimondi was having a nice discussion to smooth things over with fellow New Yorker Chris Weidman. And then, somehow, this happened. It was otherwise a quiet morning, with the exception of Tom Lawler's exceptional getup here. But we're here for the circus, and we headed toward the colored lights of the David Copperfield Theater for the final press conference of UFC 196. Verbal jabs flew across the stage, but none more potent than Nate Diaz's critique of McGregor's training as merely playing touch-butt in the park. I even caught John Kavanagh laughing at the characterization. McGregor fired back, classifying his new opponent but a mere gazelle. Holm and Tate remained respectful, friendly, but competitive. It's possible to respect your opponent and still want to beat the crap out of them. Who knew? But here we are for this disco-lit monstrosity of a press conference, seemingly far from the one a week ago in a gym flanked by random buff security types, but the same tension and teeth-gritting as each man escalated their arguments past reason. Diaz ends the press conference with classic punctuation. While a crew cleared the stage for the face-offs, Conor McGregor waited at the side of the stage, eyes staring through the media, casting a heavy shadow, the pocket square reminding me of a feather at the end of an arrow. McGregor looked calm, stern, plotting. When it came time to face off, Diaz sat into a low crouch, knuckles in McGregor's face, and whether it was in anger or in amusement, Conor punched Nate's outstretched hand with a closed fist. The ensuing scramble for control of the situation was hilarious to me, and it seemed to also amuse Diaz, who smiled as Dana White pushed him away. All week, there were far less Irish present than at UFC 189 and 194, but they finally flooded into the Grand Garden Arena for weigh-ins. Filthy Tom Lawler welcomed the fans arriving in Las Vegas as Tom McLawler. Nate Diaz took the stage, a hooded figure ascending from the shadows. Flexing in his supposed fat, skinny body, Diaz actually looked to be rather brawny. No sign of that seaside vacation Nate had been enjoying when he got the call to fight. Meanwhile, Connor was contentedly rubbing his full belly, having gone from featherweight to lightweight to this welterweight agreement. He looked out at the partisan crowd and it was grand. It was a sea of flags, here to celebrate and support their man. Due to the scuffle the day before, they weren't even allowed near each other, but Nate Diaz lunged forward anyway, and there was apparently some kind of flinch that I missed, and suddenly everyone was between them again. Even Lorenzo Fertitta interjected to keep things calm. In a craze after that stare down, McGregor's spirits, high without the drain of a weight cut, sent him into a flashy demonstration that I've not seen another fighter do, giving the fans another reason to open up in a roar. This was so much fun. Everyone in a wild frenzy, churning about. I followed a gaggle of fans out of the arena, and the Irish were singing and cheering, each with one shoe in the air. It's finally here. Fight night is upon us, and Teruto Ishihara kicks off the night by knocking out Julian Erosa. Yashabo then caps that win with the best post-fight speech of the night, so far, by exclaiming, "I love you, my bitches." The night was full of action, but my heart is here, racing along with Holly Holm's walkout music, jumping along with Miesha Tate as she stares across the cage. In the opening round, we saw Holm fire at will with Tate, who weathered the strikes, worked through them, came forward at the striker even at her peril. Tate remained steadfast, calm, and when she saw her opportunity in the second, grasped for that takedown, and now the champ was in danger as Holm defended strikes off her back. In Holm's desperation to stand, Tate is able to get the boxer's back and wrench in that choke. Is the fight going to end here? But Holm perseveres as the horn sounds and the round ends. For the next 2 rounds, Holm recenters herself as the sharpshooter. The champ wards off the challenger, even as Tate gets a few pops in. Holly continues to crack Miesha, moving in and out. The 5th round starts, and it seems like it'll be much of the same as Holm sails by with her strikes. But Miesha Tate is nothing if not resilient. A hardy veteran of many bouts and a pioneer for women in this sport, she could not go home without trying to the very end. She leapt with abandon at the champ and clasped her hands around Holm's waist, clutching so hard as if she'd fall off a cliff if she let go. Hell, I don't think Tate would have let go for anything. Tate clung to Holm, ferociously climbing to that neck as Holm busied herself with getting to the fence for leverage. By then it was too late, but Holm, having been spared in that second round, continued to fight the arm under the chin, tugging and prying until the lights went out. A decade in the game since her first amateur fight, Miesha Tate was now finally the undisputed UFC bantamweight champion. She never did relent. And as Holly Holm had waited for Ronda Rousey to wake, Tate too waited for the vanquished warrior to come back to life. Holm and Tate, while foes in the cage, have that same drive, that same care and empathy for how it feels to lose as well as win. Miesha Tate embraced her longtime partner, Brian Caraway, face contorted by that greatest of joy. Holly Holm was up instantly, no worse for wear, and quickly and firmly hugged the new champion. The happiness spilled out of Tate. Her hand clutched that belt. She cried in the way only a victor can cry. She sniffed and tried to hold the deluge of feelings in. Caraway pointed to that belt on her waist, gestured to Miesha that it was hers. It was all hers. Holm walked out of the octagon, watching Tate on the big screens as she gave her winning interview, unwrapping her gloves with respect for that toughness, but a ready determination to come right back for that gold. The lights dropped. There was no time to even let that momentous fight sink in when I caught Nate Diaz walking into the arena for the main event. In that dark cage, the younger Diaz flexed in the wandering blue spotlight, waiting for his adversary. Then, striding down the corridor, Conor McGregor emerged. I could barely hear the music over the thundering crowd, and Conor sang along with them all. At the top of the cage steps, he turned to the masses, and they cheered back. The two pugilists paced the octagon as predators, Conor trying to stare Nate down as he would a wounded gazelle, but Nate Diaz stared right back. McGregor crouched, tried to begin the fight picking and choosing the perfect strikes. Nate Diaz, who had campaigned for this bout, had another pace in mind, straight up slapping the featherweight champion as he lunged toward the taller man. Even so, Conor McGregor connected often, clubbing Diaz until his eyes began to swell and bleed. McGregor was muddling Diaz's cheeks, but Nate still marched forward, a pulp-faced zombie, cracking Conor here and there. It must be disheartening, draining, to throw power shot after power shot, to punch the approaching fighter so hard that blood squirts out of their wounds back at you, and still, the implacable enemy stumbled forward, unaffected by any of it. In that moment before the second round began, Conor McGregor gulped in air. I watched his chest heave, his face flush with effort, staring at the bloody monster across from him who undoubtedly grinned back with his red-stained eyes. McGregor threw more spinning things, long-distance Hail Marys, anything to keep this unrelenting force from advancing. But Nate Diaz sat back in his posture, leaned in with his seemingly messier visage. Somehow, the short visit with the cut man between rounds left Diaz in worse condition. But no matter, the exhausted McGregor leapt into Diaz's effortless slaps. Nathan Diaz was almost toying with McGregor. McGregor battled, clocked Diaz hard. It's tempting to see an image like this and think the outcome of this fight is obvious. It's not like Conor McGregor wasn't landing. He was landing plenty of blows. But photos can lie too. I'm not showing you all the exhaustive back and spinning kicks that missed. You can't hear the deafening voices drowning each other out in that jostled brain atop McGregor's tired body. Oh, how his lungs labored, and when he shot for this takedown, I knew it was only a matter of time before Nate Diaz finished this wild whirlwind night. Diaz deftly rolled into mount. McGregor flailed aimlessly. He looked blind. The turn happened quickly, but in photographs, the end of this fight seems to stretch out as an excruciating pain, slowly twisting into a punch that lifted McGregor's chin right over Diaz's hand. Blood poured out of Nate's face as he closed in the submission. It was in. McGregor resigned, had to tap. Diaz pushed off and went into his usual flex. The Grand Garden arena explodes. Hands go up, fists in exultation. Hands go up, grabbing the sides of their own faces in disbelief. Nate Diaz circles the octagon, still flexing. Nate Diaz's longtime boxing coach Richard Perez shadowboxes beside him as they wait to announce the result of this 2-round war. McGregor watches the replay. Another man's blood stains his skin, but he is the defeated. From "I love you, my bitches" to "I'm not surprised, motherfuckers," Nate Diaz capped the superb night of fights with the perfect victory speech. To see the happiness in Richard Perez as he walked by, years dedicated to the sharpening of this martial artist, the night was everything we love about prize fighting, the unexpected yet somehow inevitable result, the joy and agony and accomplishment. It was heartbreaking to see Nate's brother Nick Diaz waiting in the press room, unable to corner his brother in this momentous bout, but then warming and exciting to see his pride here. In the post-fight press conference, new champion Miesha Tate was effusive. She could not stop smiling. It was surreal to see the belt there in front of McGregor, who looked over and past it as if it did not exist. Eyes drifted away from the press. Clouds of thought hung over the dais. Even in spectacle, loss and triumph still reign. McGregor was gracious in defeat, perhaps surprising given his pre-fight antics, but to me, it is as all who enter the cage should exit. He considered each question asked and vowed a strong return. I've been photographing the Diaz brothers for nearly 9 years, and while it was disappointing to see the rapacious rebel McGregor, who was in so many ways gaining fascinating leverage and power as an individual fighter in the UFC, it was also endearing to see Nathan Diaz succeed in the biggest fight and payday of his career. At the top, finally, after nearing retirement, waiting patiently for her chance to show what she's made of, Tate is the champion. And in the end, it's these contented smiles I'm glad to see. After years of toiling for this delighted, well-deserved satisfaction, Nate Diaz and Miesha Tate are shining, literally glowing from the soft lens flare. This night, this sport has such a flair for drama. It has such a way of turning expectation and plans on their side, has a way of pushing its own chaotic narrative, telling a story that you didn't expect, but somehow have always wanted to hear. This is Esther Lin for MMAfighting.com, and thank you for watching.